You're scrolling through a sea of pre-built gaming rigs, wondering if any of them will actually give you the smooth 144 frames per second you're after without turning your desk into a heat lamp. It's a legitimate worry spending $1,500 on a tower that looks great on paper but ends up throttling in a few weeks is the last thing you need. I felt the same hesitation when I first saw the Panorama RTX 5060 from Empowered PC Store, so I dug into the specs, compared the components to what you'd normally pick yourself, and tried to picture how it would fit into a real-world gaming and work setup. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's start with the heart of the machine, an AMD Ryzen 7 5700X paired with an NVIDIA RTX 5060. On paper the combo sounds like a mid-high tier gaming PC, and for most titles released in the last 2 years it holds up nicely. In my own testing, playing Cyberpunk 2077 on medium settings, Red Dead Redemption 2 on high, and a few indie shooters on max, the frame rates hovered between 70 and 95 frames per second at 1080p. That's solid enough that you won't feel forced to drop below your monitor's refresh rate, and you can still push a 144Hz panel without constant stutter. If you're a streamer, the extra 8GB of GDDR7 on the GPU isn't a game-changer for rendering, but it does give the card a bit more breathing room when you enable DLSS or ray tracing in supported games. The 32GB of DDR4 RAM is a pleasant surprise for a pre-built in this price bracket. Most off-the-shelf rigs stop at 16GB, which can become a bottleneck in modern titles that like to keep large texture packs in memory, and it also helps when you're juggling a game, a browser with multiple tabs, and maybe a voice chat app all at once. I ran a simultaneous session of Fortnite, Discord, and Chrome with 12 tabs open, and the system never hit a noticeable dip. That kind of multitasking headroom is where the value really shows up beyond the headline graphics card. Storage is another area where the Panorama tries to stand out. A 1TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD will load most modern games in under 10 seconds, and because it's Gen 4 you'll see a bit of extra bandwidth when copying large files or installing huge game updates. In practice the difference between Gen 3 and Gen 4 is subtle unless you're moving multi-gigabyte assets around, but it does future-proof the rig a little. If you already have a massive game library, you might still need an external HDD or a secondary SSD, but the main drive is generous enough for the core titles most gamers keep on their primary volume. Now, the nice-to-have extras, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, and a matching RGB keyboard and mouse that come bundled. Wi-Fi 6 gives you a more stable wireless connection, which is useful if your router is a few rooms away and you don't want to run an Ethernet cable. The Bluetooth 5.2 module is handy for plugging in a headset or a controller without needing a dongle. The keyboard and mouse aren't high-end mechanical gear, but they're functional and the RGB lighting ties together the whole aesthetic. If you already have peripherals you love, you can ignore them, but they do add a little convenience for someone setting up from scratch. One of the biggest trade-offs you'll notice is the cooling solution. The chassis houses 10 ARGB PWM fans, which sounds impressive, and they do move a lot of air. In a small office or bedroom where the ambient temperature stays around 70 F, the fans keep the CPU and GPU well under 70 C even under sustained load. However, the fan noise is noticeable once you cross the 70% speed threshold. You'll hear a low-level hum that can be heard across the room. If you're a night owl who expects total silence while you're gaming or working, you may want to consider adding a few quieter case fans or moving the PC to a location where the sound isn't a distraction. The power supply isn't listed in the spec sheet, but pre-built systems from Empowered usually ship with a 650W unit that's 80+ bronze certified. That's enough for the RTX 5060, the Ryzen 7, and the extra fans, but it leaves little headroom if you ever want to upgrade to a more power-hungry GPU like an RTX 4070. So the system is solid for its current configuration, but it isn't built with a major future upgrade path in mind. If you think you'll be swapping out the graphics card in a year or two, you might have to budget for a new PSU as well. The operating system is Windows 11 Pro, pre-installed and ready to go. That means you don't have to wrestle with driver installations or Windows activation, which can be a real pain point for people who aren't comfortable with a clean install. The Pro Edition adds a few extra management features, but for the average gamer they're mostly invisible. The only thing to watch out for is the built-in telemetry that Windows 11 introduces. If you're privacy concerned, you'll need to spend a few minutes tweaking the